Shatter the Vain, a podcast about Vainglory.
Hey, and welcome to Shatter the Vain. This is episode number 72, and I'm Brad Chmielewski. So this is not your normal episode. This is one of the patch rundowns. This week, Super Evil Megacorp came back from holiday and dropped the 1.13 patch on us. And every time there's a patch, I like to get someone else who's probably been playing this patch and knows it even better than I do to help me talk through the changes and the new heroes and everything that we're going to see this coming update. And this episode, I have FooJee back joining me. Welcome.
What's up? What's up?
For people that don't know who you are, you just want to give them a quick introduction. I'd be shocked if people haven't heard your name or at least maybe popped in your stream at some point at this point.
Yeah, certainly. Well, hi, I'm FooJee. I'm one of the co-owners of Gankstars Esports. I'm the captain and competitive member of Gankstars Vega, and I've been in the scene for a little over a year now. I've had my journey starting off with Nemesis, becoming a streamer, being very involved with SCMC, always helping with balance changes here and there, and just getting a chance to travel to Korea and participate in a lot of tournaments. And I went kind of full-time Vainglory, if you will, running this organization and being somewhat of a professional player last September. Okay. So 2016 is a new year, so pretty excited to see what it has in store.
Yeah, what a wild ride. I forget the number for the episode you were on before, but it was just kind of, you're just starting streaming and
it was really early. Yeah. I think it was like 6 or 7 or so. I don't even remember. So it was a pretty long time ago when we chatted last.
Yeah, so quite a ride. Could you even imagine that?
No, not at. I mean, back then, no, I could not have imagined it. I mean, we had probably only had in-game chat for maybe a little over a month or something the last time we talked. I think the game has progressed quite a lot since then, and has exceeded my expectations.
Nice, cool. Well, we won't talk too much about that because we got a patch to run down here. Want to dive into it?
Yeah, let's go.
All right.
Vainglory News.
So I think the first thing to start off is to mention, this is a new season patch. We're recording this part during the 13-hour downtime they predicted. I think it's still going. I don't know. It might even go longer.
Yeah.
And that's partially because they were putting all this backend stuff for the seasons. The autumn season was our first season, and it came to an end. And I'm not a developer, but I feel like they probably were like, oh, crap, we need some sort of system in place to have these rewards and this payout to kick out every 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so programming that in now, and that's kind of what they're setting up and why the game's been down so long.
Yes, for sure. Well, I mean, the end of the first successful season, so I'm sure there's a lot of things they want to make sure they get right when they launch this one.
Right, yeah. And so the end of the season's happened. How'd you do on your first official season 1 with the trophies and the climb, even after the compression fiasco?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess pretty decent. I mean, as my personal performance, I ended the season Vainglory Silver. Okay. I think I might have been one of 3. I'm pretty sure T Tigers and Status Baked both achieved that as well.
Okay.
And in terms of a team ELO, if anyone's actually keeping track of that, Vega ended at POA Silver as well, which is kind of cool because I think that might actually make us one of the highest or maybe the highest team ELO from what I understand, but I don't know. I don't really have a reason to know that. I'm hoping that they'll release some kind of... They halted off on the top 100 lists and a couple of things, but I think because the season ended, it would still be nice, however accurate or inaccurate those lists are, for them to kind of throw up maybe the top 20, 25 players and in-game teams per region. I mean, you might as well. If you have the ranking system, why not showcase it?
Yeah, and then teams might even be more accurate because you...
Yeah, they probably are.
Yeah.
And then, Gankstars in terms of the last piece of the trophy. Gankstars hit level 95 before the end of the season, so I guess that'll fit nicely in there with the rest of them.
Nice, yeah. I ended up, Simply Amazing Silver, which wasn't too bad because I did get POA some point in Season 0, but then I ended with the Simply Amazing Gold. So I feel like that's respectable for the amount of time and me solo queuing a lot on stream and stuff like that. So
I think so, yeah.
I feel like a lot of people ended up struggling, but I think the season was so short that it's hard to judge where you were in Season 0 compared to Season 1.
Mm-hmm. It's very true.
So I think as we're moving forward into this Season 2, I think we strive for maybe getting to where you were and then going from there. That's kind of a good a spot to be rather than struggling for it last time. I got to get to where I was.
That's true. I think that's very true.
And they're going to be handling the, I guess, resets much differently this time. There's going to be no compression. Instead, they're using the hidden MMR, which is the matchmaking system, which I think has always sort of been there, if I'm not mistaken. They're just kind of mentioning it more.
Yeah, no, I mean the MMR is always there, and it's there for every. It's there for pretty much every competitive game, and this isn't just a a Vainglory thing. And MMR stands for matchmaking rating. So there's a hidden number that the game actually uses to match you against opponents. And the simplest way to explain it is if your number is lower than the other opponent, then the game assumes you have a X amount of percentage chance to win, but it's going to be a lower percentage. And obviously, if your number is higher, the game expects you to win by a larger percentage. And, depending on how you perform, affects your visible skill tier, or people that use the term ELO for lack of kind of a better terminology. But whatever the MMR is used to match you, and then however you perform, it shows you on your profile page your rise or fall.
So the MMR probably it changes more, I guess, quicker, because you would see maybe if you lost 3 games in a row, it would try to reflect maybe those people were too hard, so we'll try to find someone else, where your skill tier or your ELL might be you're still hotness, but maybe now you're playing against pretty good people because the MMR thinks hey, you're not doing well. Maybe those people are too good. No,
yeah, that's exactly what it does. And the cool thing about it is that if your MMR is rising quickly, then a lot of times you actually gain more ELO in perspective to what your MMR is. So in a way, you're kind of rewarded for having a lot of great success. Like in other traditional MOBA setups, if you're climbing the ladder and you're winning a lot, then your MMR number is going to rise up pretty quickly, and your ELO or skill tier will try to follow that. So a lot of times, you're right, your MMR will adjust to try to get you with opponents, and if you keep beating opponents you're not supposed to, then it will adjust your MMR even higher to try to get you, more into an adequate spot of competition.
Right. So we'll all have, I guess, our skill tiers now will all be set to unranked, but you're going to be playing those same people you have always been playing, because the MMR is going to try to match you with them again. And
that's right.
This is going to make for, I guess, better games for both sides. You're not going to be last time maybe FooJee's playing with someone that's in not bad because the skill tier compression brought everyone so close together, and it was not good for either players, and some people were struggling.
That's very true. Well, and that's the important distinction to make, right? Your MMR, your matchmaking rating doesn't change. So even though your visual skill tier drops down to, they actually created something new called Just Beginning for everyone who's played before. Unranked is still there if you've never played a ranked match, but everybody will go to Just Beginning, and then you'll get matched, though, still based upon players that you've traditionally been paired with now. So people that are around your matchmaking rating will still be the players you run into, which is cool. So it means you're right. I won't get matched with people that are brand new to the game, which will make my experience not so good. And they won't get matched with people that are veterans, which will make their experience not so good. So I'm looking forward to seeing not only that dynamic, but also exactly like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, how quickly we are capable of moving all the way through the skill tiers again, since it is different than the compression last time. I think the predicted time frame, they said it takes about half the season to perhaps get back to where you were.
Right, but they're saying that's for the, I guess, casual player, someone that's maybe grinding, 10 plus games a night. I think they may go a little quicker.
Yeah, I think I would think so. Yeah, I think obviously the larger percentage could probably take half the season. I guess we'll see. That something to compare it to might have been how quickly or how slowly your in-game team moved in season 1. I think a lot of people saw that ELO progression or the team rank progression as being something that was very quick and satisfying.
Okay.
Especially if you were a little bit more skilled, you definitely saw it move up to where you kind of wanted to be and then sort of flattened and leveled out. So maybe something similar to that. But I guess once the servers go live and we get some people playing games, we'll find out.
Yeah, for sure. I hope this works out, because I would hate for them to have to go back to the drawing board again and figure out another way to make this happen.
No, well, I mean, because they're trying to do it a little different than other, MOBAs that traditionally use things like placement matches and some kind of precursor element to arriving somewhere closer to where you're supposed to be, if that makes sense. So I think, this is, it's just season 2, winter season, and 3 months if something doesn't go according to plan, they're not stuck with it for a full year. So I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah, that is nice. Other games, like, you have to wait so long for seasons to end. So yeah.
Oh yeah, forever.
3 months isn't bad.
Not too bad.
So that's how matchmaking and the skill tier ranking is going to work in this winter season. But this update comes with a new hero. We got Reim. He's a grumpy old winter mage, and that's a pretty cool thing. Like, you don't really think tank and mage together. Like, usually your mages are like high burst damage because they're squishy and they need to kill someone before they get killed. But Reim he's a more durable kind of guy. He's like in there fighting, like throwing his slows, throwing all his abilities, and it's a really neat kit.
Yeah, I would agree. It's pretty unique perspective, a melee mage, not something you see quite often.
Yeah, so let's go over his abilities here. So his heroic perk is called Frost Guard. So Reim's basic attacks deal a certain amount of damage plus bonus crystal damage over 2 seconds and grant 50% of damage dealt with this effect as fortified health. So he's getting like a shield, right, based on the damage he's putting out.
Yeah, it's similar to a shield, similar to barriers. It works a little different though. Fortified health essentially just means it's harder to destroy the same portion of health on Reim. So I believe the best way to describe it, if you have 100 points of health and someone did 100 damage to you, you'd lose the 100 points, right? Let's just say. But if you have 100 points of fortified health and they do 100 damage, you only lose like 50 or something along those lines. So it's not a barrier to cover your health. It just quote unquote fortifies your current health, makes it a little tougher to get through.
So thick, like a thick skin almost.
Yeah, it's a thick skin. And his heroic perk is pretty interesting because just of that fact that like you kind of start thinking like, oh, like, so the more damage I do, the more fortified health I get. So it's kind of a cool way to encourage more action too, specifically from this hero, because obviously you don't get the health if you're not attacking anybody.
Right. And then his attacks and abilities also chill opponents. So basic attacks grant targets that are also chilled, or they apply a 60% slow effect. So as he's attacking you with his attacks, his basic attacks, and his abilities, you're now getting slowed if you're attacked over and over again, which is kind of fun. Like, he's going to want to get in there and fight. I've heard a lot of people compare him to Cruel a little bit, like a crystal-powered Cruel. I guess I could see that, but his kit's a little bit different. It doesn't have that lifesteal, but he wants to get in your face and kind of fight you and kite you around a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's really important that he gets in your face, because I think he's, the more we talk about him, we'll find out. But he's not the most mobile of heroes. He has no directed gap closers or like a speed boost or anything like that. So his kit's very much built around holding on to the enemy and making sure they don't get away.
Yeah. His A ability is called Winter Spire. Reim summons a Spire Ice at a nearby location, dealing crystal damage to surrounding enemies. After a short delay, the Spire shatters, dealing heavy crystal damage. So when I first saw this, I thought of Trundle's Pillar, but I guess the Spire is not terrain. Like it
is not an obstacle. Yeah, that is correct.
So I think they made sure to define that, which would be crazy.
Yeah. I think if it was an obstacle you had to move around. Wow, yeah.
Yeah. But this is kind of his main ability, and it's on cooldown very quickly. Like he's able to use quite a few of them. Like as soon as one's gone, basically he can use another one again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, I believe, it's a skill shot as well. So you do have to land them. You have to position them where you want them to go.
It does travel pretty slowly. So the best way to describe it for the listeners is if you ever saw the movie Tremors, or if you ever think about something traveling underground or burrowing, that's kind of how it looks. It kind of has this ripple effect across the ground, and when it reaches its destination, it explodes up north to the sky and does pretty significant damage, and of course the kind of re-explosion that happens there too. But it's not easy to hit though. It'll be interesting to see people that are very good with Reim being able to use this ability, since it is a bit of a slower moving one.
Like Celeste's heliogenesis are much easier to land and position than this.
Very, very kind of instant. This is closer to like Scarf Spitfire levels, like maybe 3 or something, like speed wise, maybe even a little slower than that. So
okay. His B ability is called Chill Winds. Reim deals a burst of crystal damage to all surrounding enemies, and then this ability roots enemies who are chilled. So that's with his heroic perk. Now if you've got another attack on them, you get them with Chill Wind, they're going to be rooted. And rooted's a new thing in Vainglory for us.
Yeah, it is.
We all know stuns, you can't move, you're kind of stuck there, you can't use any abilities. They made it so you could use reflex blocks later on,
mm-hmm.
but roots, you're still stuck in a place, but you can use abilities and you can auto attack. You cannot use movement-based abilities, so like Glaive's Afterburn, most of Arden's abilities, you won't be able to use them. This is it's a very short delay, so I think the root's just going to feel like you're just almost like stuck, or kind of almost like a lag for most people.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, there's a little bit of a graphic element to it. It looks like these little diamond shards are kind of floating around you when you are rooted, so you get kind of a short visual indicator. But what's interesting about this, and to kind of plug Broken Myth a little bit, they did an article on this root mechanic already. It seems that it is a new mechanic for us as players. It's also a new mechanic for SCMC, and I think we can kind of tell by the way certain heroes are affected by it, because we mentioned that like move mechanics are hindered. So something like a sonic zoom or anything, like we talked about Vanguard or whatever. But what's also interesting is Vanguard can be used on yourself.
Oh, that's true.
So there are certain things that are kind of weird, like, oh, I can't Vanguard myself even though I'm not moving to someone else. So I guess maybe in the coding it was an all or nothing thing, but supposedly there are some movement abilities that aren't being impaired, like Roadie Run or Yummy Catnip Frenzy. Like there are some things that break the root. So I'm curious to hear more from SCMC about the way they've defined this game mechanic as we head into future weeks.
Right, and if we see someone else with another root ability and how that's going to affect it.
Oh, sir. I mean, because it's not too far fetched. This, people I'm sure think of things like, thorns coming out of the ground and holding on to somebody or something like that. But it's cool if you're Celeste and you're rooted, you can still spam Helios on your target while you can't move.
Especially if you play a lot of Ringo, or even Vox. It's like you're all about those auto attacks. So
that's true, and you can stutter step while rooted too. That was a point that was made. So as long as you have the correct rhythm still of tapping around, even though you're not physically moving your feet, the game will still read correct stutter step patterns, which is kind of interesting.
Oh, very neat. It would be fun. So then his ultimate is called Valkyrie. Reim summons an ancient Valkyrie, devastating enemies at a large location. All enemies are slowed, while enemies closer to the center are stunned and take increased damage. So he's got a root and a stun. Like that's pretty neat. But this thing is hard to hit. Like, it is slow.
Yeah, it is. It's probably for the best though, because if it does hit, it's a lot of damage, and the effect, the area of effect of this ability is huge. Like, it's a really large area on the map that it covers. So I think I feel like it feels like almost like the inside of the Ardent Gauntlet is almost the kind of I would say the hitbox for this if you will. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it just launches down. It's a giant nuke, essentially. You just call down the ice from the heavens. It just falls on the enemy. And if you're unfortunate enough to be in the center of it, then you get locked up. If you're on the edges, you get slowed up. So,
But like maybe Adagio's ult, I feel like we're just going to see everyone kind of reflex blocking this. The Crucibles, like, all right, not a big deal.
Yeah, I think so. Like, the negative effects will obviously be brought out. I think what'll be interesting is, once if it's very late game and Reim drops this on you, even if you crucible it, you'll stop the stuns and the slows. But I still think people will probably take some pretty significant damage if they get caught in it at all. So it'll be interesting to see, can people kite around it? Can they even take Reim out before he's even able to bring it down, or do they boots away from it as soon as they start seeing? Because it does have a bit of a build-up image. You kind of see, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like kind of air sucking towards the center, and then the Valkyrie dropped from above. So there's some reaction time.
Yeah, it looks cool. This whole kit is very interesting. It's all about those slows, like sticking people, like we said with the root and the stun, and yeah, just kind of keeping people where you want them to be. That's kind of his kit, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just still a term from Hearthstone. It's like a control mage or something like that. It's all about spells, freezing your enemy up, making sure they can't do what they want to do. Right. And that's it's cool. I'm excited. I'm excited to play him.
And I think you have to build them crystal. I don't think there's even any way that you could go a weapon of Reim.
Yeah, it doesn't sound very good.
How do you think we're going to see Reim here in this 1.13 meta? Or do you think people are just is it going to be a Finn where people are having fun with him in casuals and, a few people start to shine with him?
It's an interesting question. Like, I feel like this is a type of character that's probably very hard to balance for competitive play and to be in like the constant meta, simply because if you make him tanky enough to not die instantly, he just never dies and he kills your whole team because you can't kill him. But because he's a melee mage, if you don't make him tanky enough, he just dies instantly and does nothing every single team fight. So I'm curious to see how the fortified health keeps him alive. If there'll be some kind of hard counters. I think, like, I'll use Ringo as a continual example. So maybe if Reim gains popularity, we'll see a meta shift just in terms of his counter. But he's got some tough characters to have to maneuver around in the meta right now. So I don't know. We'll see. My prediction is that he won't be meta changing, but there'll be some players that find a way to work him in here and there.
Right, like you said, Ringo, the Vox, Koshka's just gonna just jump on him, and Taka's too.
Kestrel, I don't know how he's gonna fight Kestrel at all. I just any character that has massive range with poke potential, he's gonna need a lot of help. He might be an early game Titan. I haven't had a lot of time on Reim yet. So, after, a week or two of kind of sneaking him into some matches here and there, we might find out he's similar to a Vox style of plays. You might be able to give up some early game kills, but as long as you get your rotations, you keep enough farm, maybe he scales into the late game and just dominates the map. But I don't know. We'll find out.
Right. A little tough to tell right now, but I'm excited to play him. I'm definitely picking him up. But yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna don't know if I'm gonna be spamming him. It's gonna be like, well, let's give this guy a try.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will kind of have that feel. He looks really cool. He sounds really cool. I think he's harder to play than a lot of people might anticipate, but he'll be fun nonetheless. He fits right in with the winter theme.
For sure, yeah. And then I want to jump down to the other heroes that are getting adjustments here in this patch. At the top here has to be Blackfeather. Blackfeather, he was turned into a beast here in 1.12, and I think that was because of a bug we had where it allowed Blackfeather to use Book of Eulogies and basically get like double the amount of health back, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
right?
very large amount. Yeah.
Right, so that's why him being in lane, oh, he's almost dead, up, he's back to full health, he'd clear a wave. But other than that, just that bug fix, he didn't get too many other changes. His base health was brought down a little bit, and then his crystal ratio on his on point, that the one that got his shield and his little poke ability, that went down a little bit too. And do you think this was enough for Vox, or not for Vox, for Blackfeather? Or is it? Is this...
Well, I mean, we'll have to see. Like a lot of the complaints with characters being like, let's say, overpowered are the fact that you just never know who you're going to run into. We're still in a blind pick world right now. There's no drafting, so Blackfeather can be pretty dangerous if you don't go into lane with someone who can poke him out. I think the book change could affect him pretty well. I feel like right now Ringo is an example. If you're a good Ringo, you can actually punish Blackfeather even with the book bug pretty good. So I'm curious, like, will he maintain the ability to get to that mid game dominance if the enemy team's able to pressure him really hard in lane? Maybe he doesn't get there. Maybe he falls off a little earlier than normal just because of the fact he can't sustain himself. It doesn't mean he won't still be good in jungle. I still think Blackfeather is actually pretty strong in the jungle. I think the most skilled players will still rock pretty hard on him. Okay. I think that won't change too much, but like I said, it's hard to say. I don't think these changes are very drastic. So
no, but on the downstream, I tuned in at some time when Surprise Birthday was on, and he mentioned like there was a Rona bug, and then they fixed it, but they also nerfed Rona in one of these patches, and she just fell out of things completely. So I think they're just trying to see like, is this bug fix enough? And maybe if not, then we come back with 1.14. Which will probably be quicker than we saw 1.13, but they can kind of make that adjustment.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so. I mean, to some extent, he got a little bit of even a buff. Like they fixed the bug in his favor for his Rose Trail, which enemies at the back of it weren't getting the speed boost, and right. That's kind of a big deal too, in my opinion. Like if your team's able to catch up even more so now, like it's another valid point to having him on the Halcyon Fold. So we'll have to see. I play quite a bit of Blackfeather, so I'm sure I'll hop on him and give him a run for some games and get an idea of if he's still viable.
Yeah, that Rosefeather trail, the Rose Trail, it makes a lot of sense because I was starting to feel like, Blackfeather, you're always like way ahead of all of us.
I know, like why can't I'm walking on this pink dusty thing, but nothing's happening. Like I feel loved. I don't feel faster.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right, yeah. Keep playing Blackfeather. Have fun with him. I don't think we're gonna see him go anywhere too quickly this update. And then Kestrel. Yeah, Kestrel. After seeing Shinkaigen play him, or player on the VIPL, like I think people are like, oh man, Kestrel's really good. Everyone's starting to be like, I need to learn this girl.
Yeah.
That her early damage has been nuts. Like if you get rolling, you can just keep rolling and end those games pretty quickly. But what they changed was her Glimmer Shot, the damage to minions. The damage went down, but the CP ratio, or the damage went up, but the CP ratio went down, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
The damage
went up for earlier levels the flat, well, let's call it flat. So flat damage to minions went up for early levels. It's down from later levels a little bit, and then the CP ratio for minion damage is just down completely from 80 to 25%. Yeah.
Okay, and then her one shot, one kill actually got a buff.
Got a buff. Yeah.
So now she has more flat damage early, and her ultimate has more damage early. It's like I'm missing. I think I'm missing the Kestrel change here.
Oh my goodness! Yeah, this is tough. Like, Kestrel is insanely good. We had an idea of Kestrel's power back in mid-December, and we kind of saw obviously her hit the VIPL stage. It was kind of the first public place people could bring her out and really show her off, and she's nuts. Like, there's not, in my opinion, a character that has more power packed into their kit right now than Kestrel does. She's so dominant. So I think because the patch was submitted quite early into the holidays to make sure they could get it in time for the season to start, the feedback for Kestrel probably just didn't have enough time to marinate. I honestly think it had no time to marinate because they buffed her. Like, of any person in the entire game to add additional damage to, Kestrel was not the hero. she was the opposite of who should have been buffed. So
yeah, that's true. I believe a lot of people knew. I think the patch got put in even before they all went on holiday. So Kestrel was already only in the game for a week, maybe 2 weeks, and the patch was already kind of. So.
Patch was already kind of wrapping up for the season. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of really important things they need to get out for this season, and they need time off too. Like, they can't just 24/7, 365 their lives away. So, I'm pretty patient with these kind of things. People get pretty passionate about this. There's a lot of complaints about Kestrel's power, and I don't disagree with the concerns, but I'm also trying to be realistic with how much SMC is capable of doing in a small window. So
for sure, yeah. But I think if you're looking to learn anyone this patch and practice anyone, I think it's Kestrel.
Yep.
And we'll probably see her banned quite a bit as VGL is starting here.
Assuming they don't come in and do any kind of mid patch updates to her, I don't expect to see her picked or available to pick by anyone unless it's game 3.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Then the next hero that got changed was Petal. Petal is still just, they're trying to tweak her, I think, find the right place for her. Really just her munions, her heroic perk got changed. The pets got changed. They got a little bit more health and armor because of Sky. Sky was just wrecking Petal. And so her pets and her seeds now have a percentage health and then 100% armor, 100 armor, 100 shield. So she's just her minions are gonna be a little tankier in lane. And I was starting to feel this. I felt like my minions are gone. Where'd they go?
That was true.
The 2 times I would play Petal.
Well, and because they're considered, they're now being considered lane minions as well, which means that means just one thing. Some people I think were confused, they're just you get much gold for killing them like a lane minion. No, when they say they're considered lane minions, they're referring specifically to the fact that wave clear reduction that's built kind of hidden into characters affects. Is now her minions now have the same affectation. So if a character has reduced wave clear mechanics like a Celeste Helio, or Sky's newly adjusted wave clear for her Suri Strike, then her minions respect that wave clear reduction too, which is kind of cool. It means they're going to be pretty strong. I think they're going to be harder to kill. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with Petal. Not every hero is always going to be a meta champion. I think SCMC would be fooling themselves if they thought they could make every single hero what we would consider viable for competitive meta. But I think it's still cool that there's these niche heroes and fun heroes that can be played all over the skill tiers that are still really strong. Petal has her very, very, very specific spot in the meta.
Loyal fans of Petal.
Very, very loyal. I mean, it was a year ago where Petal was the king of the meta to some extent with the old breaking point and auto attack. Yeah, it's been a very interesting journey for her. She's changed maybe almost more than anyone else in terms of how she works.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then then the last hero was Sky. You mentioned basically her Suri Strike just got some damage reduction to the minions, the lane minions, because she could just nuke a wave and then go wherever she wanted.
Yep. I don't think this really changes too much. I mean, basically the way it works now is you can just be ability, and once you hit like level 8 and the wave's gone. I don't want to say it's just level 8, but once you have enough crystal power, you can just nuke it without doing anything else. Now you're probably just gonna have to B and then A for like a second and a half, and it'll kill all the minions. I don't think it's really gonna change too much, but it does help a little bit. I do think she needed it. I do think she had way too much free wave clear.
For sure, yeah. So that was all the hero changes in Reim. Like with these small changes, do you foresee any adjustment to our meta of even Skyfeather that emerged? Blackfeather, Sky, and Arden, or maybe Catherine, if you're tired of playing Arden.
Well, I mean, I think the meta's already kind of started adjusting a little bit. Like you're seeing a lot of Catherines popping up to kind of try to counter the Kestrel, because Catherine's shield is one of the few things in the game that can handle it. I think there's actually a spot for Finn in the current meta. I get a lot of flack for saying that, but I think one of Finn's biggest issues is that most roam players just don't know how to play him well, because they just don't play him.
Yeah.
But he's tanky. He has AoE stun. He has a lot of shield. He can and shield and health barriers and armor he gives to allies. Like his ultimate can yank Kestrel and Sky back after they Suri Strike or go invisible and try to get away. Like there's a lot of things, I think, if players are willing to take a bit of a risk on learning some new heroes, meta will kind of start shifting in general. But that's not because of these changes.
Okay.
I think that's just the natural evolution of meta, and at least the North American region. So
you played a lot of League, and I still play League. Like you'd see the meta shift where the game would just shift, not because of the patch, but people would start to realize like this person kind of counters that one that we all forgot about, and it would shift on its own without any help from, I guess, the developers.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, people will find the ways to make a character really strong, and they'll find ways to win. And if something seems like, oh, this is an easy way to be able to take the victory, then leave it up to the players and they'll find it.
Right. And it gets boring, I think, playing the same people over and over, to be honest. Like, although maybe
it does.
Someone's really popular or really strong.
It's really boring, you're right. I mean, I've always been probably one of the most self-proclaimed high skill tier players that does not stick to specific broken champions. I've always been pretty passionate about having a larger roster. When I do stream, a lot of times I'll go through 6 or 7 or 8 heroes before I'm done.
Okay.
I know some people have the tolerance to sit on one hero for 50 games in a row just because maybe it wins, but I don't know. Like after about 2 or 3 games with a single hero, I kind of like to change it up a little bit. But yeah, I guess we'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. And then we had a couple item changes. I already mentioned the Book of Eulogies. That got fixed here. It was mainly because we were seeing it on Blackfeather, but they fixed the passive where it was triggering multiple times. And then Scout Traps and Flares got changed a little bit. So Scout Traps, there was a bug where it wasn't revealing maybe a Scout Trap that was right next to it in the bush, which I just assumed. I didn't realize this was a bug. I just thought oh, it's in the bush. It's hidden maybe in the grass. I can't see that one, but I guess this was a bug. So that would be nice. Yeah. And then I think the flares have changed quite a bit. They used to be global, and then now they're the smaller area, and now we're going to see a radius of where the flare is kind of showing. A visual ring, I guess. So you can kind of know oh, if I step into this bush or step over here, I'm not being seen. And I think this will be very interesting, and we're going to see maybe a lot more counterplay around flares, because knowing how far away you need to be now, somebody may be able to be okay, I'll just sit here a little outside that range.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's interesting. Now you can flare on one side of the wall and see on the other. Seeing in a bush and out of the bush at the same time is now kind of new too. And so I'm curious to what it's going to feel feel like when using them. I like the range indicator though. I mean, the flares before were very ambiguous. Like you didn't really know where the vision was being granted from a flare at all.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. Vision ring's cool. I think you're right. You can, if you're walking forward and someone flares, you can stop right at the edge and then kind of catch them out, maybe because they think you weren't there, but really you were just being pretty sneaky by staying right on the outside of it. But at the same time, because they made this change before and you can see enemy flares and you can still see them now, you have to be pretty careful about like how you're flaring too as a team, because if you want to surprise an enemy, you don't want to give your position away by flaring from a space where the enemy might be able to guess where you're flaring from.
Right. Yeah.
You can see them on the mini map too, so it's very much a positional thing. Like if you're in lane and you're like, where's the enemy? And you see a flare go into their tri-bush, you kind of have an idea like, oh, well, there's somewhere around there.
Yeah,
so I feel pretty safe to farm or something like that. So,
So keep an eye on that. I think we'll be watching or paying more attention to flares. And I feel like since they reveal scout traps, flares have become even more valuable in the game. The other thing that got changed that I think is going to maybe shift things around is the minion mine balancing. I know this is a issue for a lot of people. Like, when do I take the minion mines? Should I take them? You watch, the VGL and the VIPL, they like never take it unless it's like, all right, we're going to win the game. And then if you're a new player, it's something in the jungle to take. I want to take this. Why not? This is gold. I need more gold, right?
Yeah.
So they got rid of the idea that minions are going to give the enemy laner increased money from the minions that are stronger. So the way they worked before, if you took the minion mines, your minions would be they'd be stronger, but they'd be worth more money and more XP. That gold is now gone. And I think that's important. I think that's what was stopping a lot of people in the higher tiers from getting the minion mines, because the team with the most gold typically won the game. But yeah, what's going to happen now, your minion mines, when you take one, it makes the minions stronger to the laner, right? It doesn't necessarily push the lane, but if the other enemy gets caught in the minion wave, they're going to be affected by a lot more damage and just like get hurt a little more. And those minions also do more damage to the turret. So once they do get to the turret, they will start to do more damage. And if you control both minion mines, again, it does not increase the gold bounty of the lane minions, but minions have drastically heightened offense and defense against everything. So minions, champions, whatever is in the lane. And minions will push the lane if you have both of them. So this is a kind of a big effect to how we saw the minion mines working, and I think this is a good change, and it's going to hopefully affect the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always happy to see them play with objectives, because my biggest feedback to SMC for some time now is that I don't think their objectives are perhaps engaging enough. So minion mines have probably been the worst offenders of this until this patch. What I will say though is, I'm going to be kind of the pundit and the devil's advocate for this balance change, though. Okay. So if you take a minion mine, then it's still, the way the objective works is that if you take one, then the other team takes one, and it's almost kind of like you don't have one again. It basically, it's kind of like, well, now we both have minion mines and we can just get back to farming the jungle. So I think the key is, if you take a minion mine, it should probably be your enemy's minion mine. I feel like if you take your own minion mine, it's fine. It pushes turrets. It does extra damage to the enemy. But if you take your own and that's all you do, then the enemy's just going to take theirs, and the game kind of in a sense resets itself. So now minions are just a little bit stronger than they used to be. Obviously when you take the second one, it starts pushing the wave. And the elements of the game change. So I'm not sure if you're going to see a lot of difference on these minion mines from higher to yes you'll probably see them get taken, but then once they're taken, I feel like they kind of fall back into the not a very engaging objective category.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
You could have that maybe that Taka on your team or the other team that is being incredibly annoying and going on the other side and just constantly always taking it back or something like that, just to like cause that.
Yeah, I think when in lower tiers, people just take minion mines because it's something to do. A lot of times, like they're not really sure about the mechanics completely of it. Or let's say you have a really like fancy fight in the enemy jungle and you win, and they're clearing the jungle, and then they kill a minion mine, and it's only like 5 minutes into the game or something, and that can actually be really bad for people because it pushes the wave. And when the wave's constantly being pushed, it's very hard for your laner to farm effectively.
Right.
So I think it can help to that extent, so that if lower tiers are picking up the minion mine just because they feel like it, then it's not going to punish the laner who's spam pinging, please don't pick this up because I'm not ready for it yet, kind of thing. So that's kind of a cool side effect. I feel that obviously once you get both of them, if you're really ready to push, that still looks to remain the same. Not having extra gold is also very interesting because it's very much an incentive to constantly want to make sure you capture it. So the thing I think that SCMC did successfully with this change is I think you will see them taken. I think minion mines will be taken. I don't think it necessarily makes them better than they were before. Right. If that makes sense. I think they're going to be taken because it just makes sense to take them. But then once they're both taken, the game just kind of goes back to where it's always been.
Okay. Do you think maybe in this mid-tier range, are we going to see the games go longer because of this extra gold bounty that we would get from the minion mines? You're now maybe delayed on some of those items. Maybe that second or third item you might have bought is now coming maybe a couple minutes later.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, like in the mid tiers, I don't have the best authority on speaking for how people will probably prioritize taking them. Mm-hmm. What I will say from a higher skill tier, minion mines were just never taken until maybe 15 minutes, or close to that time frame. So most of us are pretty used to spending almost 80% of the entire game without that extra gold anyway. Okay. So I don't know. Like I don't think games will go longer. I think perhaps what will happen is people will have to adjust their behaviors. So people that traditionally haven't taken minion mines in the past, if the other team does take it, they'll need to be really careful about understanding how the mechanics of the lane minions work. Because if they start picking fights in lane or wanting to push turret and they're not pushing as quickly, they'll need to remember to take the minion mine in order to be able to do it. I think the last kind of point I'd make on it, which is maybe the more unique point, is just perhaps when they're going to be taken. I think that's maybe the bigger part of the discussion is like, I think they will be taken, but like when? I feel like if you do it early, it's probably not a good idea. I think naturally people think, oh, if it doesn't push the wave and it only does more damage to the enemy laner, then why not take it right at 4 minutes or 5 minutes? I mean, the minion mine does a lot of damage at that time. I think because people generally don't take it that early, they may not know exactly how much damage they take from the minion miner at that point of the game. But a really important aspect of the jungle is being what would be called battle ready or battle readiness. So if one team takes the minion mine at like 4.5 minutes and the other team doesn't, if there's a clash in the center of the map, there's a chance for one that you didn't get there as quickly, so they might have shopped because you took the time to kill it. You might be actually hurt quite a bit, so it might be easy for the other team to take gold mine at that point because, once again, you're not as battle ready as perhaps if you left it alone and didn't take all the damage. So I think there's some pretty very like kind of specific strategic ways to think about it. Obviously more complex, but at the core, at the base of everything, I still think they aren't great. I still think they need work. I still think as an objective, they're not very objective. There's nothing that excites me about them. Like when you take an objective, you want to feel like, yes, like we just got this buff or we just took this objective. This is great. This is awesome. Like you want to feel engaged about it. And I think that's really important for a MOBA. And right now they still, I don't think with these changes, they still lack in that enthusiasm department.
Okay. Fair enough. I think, yeah. So maybe the minion mines will probably be something we see continue to be changed. But this was our first change in almost a year and a half of the game. So
Well, the minion mines. No, I mean, there were some changes before. Like there have been some small changes to how the minion mines work in terms of like the pushing power and like in gold payout and experience payouts. Like they've done some small tweaks. This is a really big one though. So hopefully this is maybe some preemptive behaviors of more things they're thinking about doing.
For sure. Okay. Well, that's all like the balance changes, the heroes. There's some fun visual stuff. The new map, we're going to be seeing that probably for maybe this update and the next one. The winter map. It looks pretty fun. I know we went through a lot of revisions. They said we're seeing things on the map and how that's always, I think, the hardest part is you have a new skin on this map. Like, are you going to be able to see everything? Can you see people's abilities? And I think for the most part, this map accomplished like being able to still function in game without like anybody being hurt.
Yeah, I agree. It looks good. Like it's bright. It's bright. The first thing I kind of had to get used to was maybe actually for the first time ever turning my brightness a little bit down on my iPad because it's very white, but it's very pretty. I mean, the snow is really cool. I think they did a great job with the skin.
Mm-hmm. And then we got 2 tier 3 skins, that prehistoric glaive and the tier 3 scarf. I was saying this tier 3 scarf, I say the splash art and the concept is great. I have a very hard time knowing when things are, I guess, on fire or my goop is on fire. That's my only complaint about this. And I think that's only because I only played it like once or twice in the test realm.
Well, it's a drastic change. I mean, for people that are very used to, I mean, Scarf's been out since December of 2014. So for over a year, you've had the same fireball, the same goop, the same kind of ultimate mechanics. They adjusted his fan the flames a few months after his release to make them more visible. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. Like this is a massive visual overhaul. So everything everyone's ever used to seeing with Scarf is completely different. And like the little ice like puffs around the enemy instead of the flames, everything just visually looks different. Like his auto attacks are like little shards of ice, which means they're like the diameter and dimension of the auto attacks a little different. So even last hitting requires like a little bit of a mental change. So skins. I think skins like this are really cool. I think players have to be pretty careful with in SCMC too, to some extent, with like when they make such drastic visual changes, just how much it can affect the gameplay. Even if it isn't like a buff to the hero, it's still like Ringo's twirling silver on his tier 3 makes his auto attacks incredibly easy to see. But Ringo tier 1, his auto attacks are basically invisible. So when he's using twirling silver, like it's really much harder to see. So like for some people, that's a big deal. So, I guess we'll see how everyone reacts to it once it's on their own iPad and in front of them and they're kind of getting a gist for the effects.
Yeah, and then with all the winter, like the snow map, everything on Scarf just felt like it blended in, which is neat for the theme, but yeah, still visually.
I actually think the fire version of Scarf looks really good on the snow map because he stands out a lot. Like the fire on top of all the blue and the cold and the white looks pretty cool. Like it's obviously just his existing skins, but it's pretty cool. Like the fire one looks pretty nice on the winter map.
Okay, I'll have to try that out. When you have a new skin available, you're like, I gotta play that one. So I went for that.
Yeah, I mean, both of the skins look pretty good, but good contrast of colors, I guess.
And then the limited edition are one just for this patch. It's only around for 30 days. Is the Winter War Catherine. I'm picking this up. Like that's guaranteed. Like this skin looks a lot of fun, and being limited release, I think I say this in a lot of episodes. Like if you can afford them, I say pick these up. Like next year when you're playing Winter War Catherine and no one else has her, they'll be like, oh my god, what is that skin? I've never seen that.
I think it's definitely worth picking up too. I think the skin looks really good. And, for a non-spell casting hero, there's always a lot of, I'm sure, thought about how do we make the skin feel cool and engaging, but without adding so many unnecessary effects to where it feels like it changes what the ability's purpose is. And I think they did a really good job with this. Like it's, the green shield's a cool effect, like that, and the green kind of expansion to, her ultimate's really cool, having the little spinning disc in her in her shield/sword, I think is cool. Lots of nice little touches that make her look pretty cool.
I'd love to see whoever's doing that slow-mo project do this for this skin, because I think those
for sure.
Little things like you said, the spinning disc and everything on her shield sword would be great.
It'll stand out. I feel so bad for not remembering the name of her shield. I feel like calling it a shield sword makes it sound ridiculous. Like I'm like, oh yeah, her shield sword. Right. And everyone's like, oh yeah, we get it. I mean, there's a cool name for it. I just don't remember what it is.
Yeah, I'm blanking on it too.
Forgive us.
But that does it for patch 1.13. Am I missing anything or anything else you want to chat about? I think that's everything. It's going to be an interesting time, and I think 1.14 will come pretty quickly. We've sat on from 1.12 to 1.13 for a month and a half, and we may get back to those like first week of release schedules, because we're like in a weird time. It's the middle of the month and we're getting this update. Yep,
that's true.
Well, FooJee, thanks for joining me. But before we get out of here, where can people find you? You're streaming on Mob Crush these days, right?
Yes, I have moved over to Mob Crush primarily. So you can find me at mobcrush.com/FooJee. You can catch me there. I don't have a schedule, not yet. I'm trying to do that because I know a good streamer is supposed to have a good schedule, and I'm a bad streamer, I think, because I don't. But you can find me there. You can also find me on Twitter at the FooJee. And then, of course, Gankstars .gg is our website. So anything kind of related to what I'm doing, what our teams are doing, what's going on with my side of the world, that's all the links.
Awesome. And VGL starting this weekend, so good luck to you. And
it's
Vega.
True, only 3 days.
Yeah.
And 3 days till round 1, right after a patch release, 3 days. So it's good. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be good.
Great. So, and that'll do it for this episode. We'll be back with episode 73 here, and I'll let you know how my Reim games have been going. All right. Thanks for listening. Take care.
Shatter the Vein.